The content presented is for entertainment purposes only. Some content may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. So just a couple of things I want to know from you guys. Are you willing to pay higher prices for diesel gasoline? So all the truckers out there, all of the farmers, anybody with large machinery, generators, what are you guys' thoughts on these prices like going up? I also would like to know if you guys are okay with some of these different articles that talk about how white people shouldn't go see Black Panther here in the beginning of November, and how it's not for you, or at least you should not go on the opening day, buy tickets, give it to somebody else. I don't know. That feels really weird for me, but and also the Supreme Court looks like they're looking at rethinking the affirmative action ideas for colleges, and I'm wondering if that's something that you guys are still interested in. So, this is just, it sucks because it's like the patches, the very simple patches that have been put on the oil industry and kind of opening up our gas reserves so that we could see a little bit of a downturn as far as the price is going to go for gasoline. However, even though it's still $1 less than what it was at its highest, it's still overpriced. Now, fuel supplier Mansfield Energy is taking steps to prepare for a diesel shortage on the East Coast of the United States, issuing an advisory to businesses that rely on the fuel to plan rather than panic. Last week, Mansfield Energy raised a red flag on the upcoming diesel fuel shortage in the southeastern region of the U.S., speculating it could be from poor pipeline shipping economies and a historically low supply of reserves. On a normal day, the East Coast markets have 50 million barrels in storage, but right now, there are less than 25 million barrels available, so 50%. Wow. A tight diesel supply will force prices to go up, which will eventually make it too expensive for some people. The company said in a press release on Monday, high prices will bring demand back down enough that it balances with limited supply. So it's really tough, to keep looking at the gas prices. It's tough to kind of see the policies and laws that have been put in place recently over the last 2 years, which have really hurt the United States as far as like the bottom line when it comes to oil and gasoline and other petroleum products. With us now pumping and processing, crude oil from American pipelines, American pumps, offshore, onshore. It's getting kind of ridiculous now, especially where it was creeping up to almost 2.5 times more, which I think is where it rested at the highest. And now it's just twice as much that we're paying for gasoline now at the pump. Now, this is exactly, in my belief, this is my opinion, that this is what the radical left ideologues want to have happen. They want to make gas prices so high you can't afford it, so you are forced to participate in this global climate reduction of the oils and of the gasolines, and participate in purchasing a vehicle to sidestep from gas to electric. And what's really interesting is that they're just sidestepping from one industry to another. And it's really interesting that these climate enthusiasts are now enacting these changes from within, enacting laws, lobbying, pouring tons and tons of millions of dollars into the pockets of lawmakers. And they are working to destroy the oil and gas companies. They want to completely stop pumping oil in America. The only thing that is going to happen with that is then that is going to put a strain on our power grid. Now, these are the things that we're having issues with over in California, where they have rolling blackouts, and they actually are encouraging people not to charge their cars at night because it puts a strain on their current electrical grid to the point where they have many blackouts. Now, the big reason for this is obviously they don't have sufficient backups. They don't have sufficient supply to meet the demand. And so this is where it's really important to have a bit of everything. You know, obviously our backups is obviously like coal, with the next thing and most best and probably the most cleanest now, because we have our technology has advanced enough, is steam nuclear. That is a very, very clean way to produce a lot of electricity for a lot of these cities. And everybody is scared and afraid of it. Now, obviously, we have had a few we have a few man-made disasters due to some of the overlooking different safety features and stuff like that for these very powerful nuclear plants. However, our technology is in a place now where they have been the safest that they have ever been in nuclear history. I think that would be obviously our main to keep things going, and then obviously offsetting as much as we can with wind, solar, and water-powered electricity. The thing is that if you just rely on wind, eventually you're not going to have windy days. If you just rely on solar panels, there's going to be days where it's going to be rainy, windy, and it's going to be snowing to the point where you're not going to be able to utilize that energy. So it is important to have backups upon backups. This is a good rule of thought for computers, which is actually something I need to do. I need to get a power supply just in case something does happen to my computer, that all my technology, all my peripherals, my monitors and everything is safe. Hardware is safe. Just kind of the same thing with the power grid. And unfortunately, you know, with not producing these things, that's what's going to happen. We're going to have another California, everywhere else. And I think a lot of people are really looking to places like California to see how not to produce a good power grid. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But with all these things that have been going on and trying to do this big push, you know, to put solar panels on old homes and to encourage everybody to get electric vehicles, is the biggest thing is that it's just not popular yet. Not because, you know, people don't want to. It's just that they're not cool enough yet. Number one. Number two, majority of them are very, very expensive. Now, obviously, with the birth of Tesla, they are starting to come down in price, and now there are more electric vehicles which are more priced for the average middle American and low-income Americans. However, they're still very, very expensive. The other thing too is that I don't think there's really a plan in place to what we're going to do with these materials at the end of their life cycle. Are these cars going to go as far as, 5 years or as 10 years? I mean, I think the average American now are swapping vehicles out every 3 to 5 years. So at the end of the life of these vehicles, whether in 10, 15, or 20 years, what are we going to do with the solar technology? What are we going to do with all the batteries and the hazardous material that it's made out of, which is, lithium ion? So what's going to happen to all of these? And what's unfortunate is that, I think it's a great idea to run electrical cars, but if you don't have nuclear energy to compensate for everybody having an electric car in that city or state, that's not going to work very well. And I don't know about you guys, but it's really nice to have heat in the wintertime. It's really nice to have air conditioning in the summertime. These are the things that I think about. So one of the reasons I am worried about this is that if it proceeds forward and we move to electric cars due to overpriced oil, will our current infrastructure handle it? As of right now, no. If we all bought electric cars, like I would even say, go far to say, is even if a third or a quarter of these larger states just all of a sudden went to electric cars and started charging them in the evening, then what's the cost? That's something I don't really understand. Is I don't think there has been a really good, kind of spreadsheet and kind of a think piece on, how much it costs per mile, per watt versus how much per mile per gas. And it's really interesting that I've Googled it several times to try to find, what's the difference, and as far as like what's going to be cheaper or more expensive. I mean, I think a lot of these individuals who, are very ferocious and very forceful into saying that everybody should be getting these cars and everybody should be driving them. But there's not really a lot of talk as far as like how much it's going to cost you on your electric bill. And that's the only thing too, is like, if we can really have a good cross analysis as far as like how much it is per mile, wattage versus gas. And, maybe it is cheaper, and, maybe that's a great idea, but without the infrastructure, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Right now, electric cars are definitely on the rise, but it's still been kind of like a novelty thing, and people don't really think about buying them, especially for individuals who do a lot of traveling. I mean, a lot of people don't want to go and sit at a charging station for, 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour. So there's a lot of things, like, I'll be honest, I'm excited about the thought of having an electric car. Like, I think Tesla has some really cool technology. In fact, if when I get to the point, ideally, I would definitely want an electric car, especially just running around into town and back. But as far as like long distance travel, I think I'd rather have a gas-powered vehicle. I think that you can go a lot farther. I think mile-wise, I think they're just not yet on par with gas, as well as because it is powered by, lithium-ion batteries. Eventually, those batteries will start to diminish right off of the lot. So eventually, it's going to get to the point. I mean, I don't know if you all have had laptops or any other devices with lithium batteries. After a few years, it doesn't charge as much or as fast, and over time, that charge, and as far as like if it could get the same full charge that it had when you first bought it, that's going to be greatly diminished over time. And of course, the miles that you can go will also reduce. So I still don't know, like how will we dispose all these materials at the end of the electric car's life cycle? Because in comparison, there's a lot more, there's a lot more plastics, there's a lot more petroleum, there's, with the hazardous materials and stuff. Like when we go back to recycle all that stuff, what does that look like? With, a traditional gas-powered vehicle, it's mostly aluminum and metal and steel. And a lot of that can be recycled, and it's not going to cost a lot because it's really simple and easy to do. Where with these batteries, you have to really deconstruct them and you have to store them in a certain way because it is hazardous waste. So I don't know. I'm not sold 100% as of yet because they haven't answered all the reasonable questions, in my opinion, on gas-powered vehicles. And so I think it's really important that they talk about these things. So Mansfield warned that the U.S. economy level consumers may feel pain at the pump, but for business that rely on diesel for operations, supply will still be available. That is not to say that there will not occasionally be situations where there is true physical lack of products, the company said. Some cities might run dry on diesel for a few days, at least at the terminal level. But the fuel supply chain is dynamic and suppliers will rally to fill in any gaps in supply. In preparation, in preparation for the shortage, Mansfield advised bulk fuel buyers not to panic and order fuel when they do not know whether it'll fit in the tanks or not. Fuel should be available by normal means in most areas, the company said. So not only do I think of like the 18 wheelers that are running around out there, or the big, box trucks and box vans, but I also think about, the United States Postal Service, USPS, FedEx, DHL, and others who are going to do. What are they going to do when they are so high already? Like, gasoline is literally twice as much as it was when the current president came into office. So what are they going to do? Like, I've heard that some contractors are spending tens of thousands of dollars just on fuel every week as an expense. And I'm sure that most companies have yet to adjust for the inflation month over month. And that's the other thing too, is with inflation happening and all these gas prices going up, a lot of these companies are not adjusting for all of these changes. So, so not a lot of people are getting raises, have gotten any raise over the past couple of years to adjust for not only the inflation, but also for gas prices and how much it costs for them to get back and forth to work. And what about the individuals who are using their vehicles for their business, or, as a personal contractor? Like, these things aren't getting adjusted to the point where people are being compensated for these additional costs and these additional expenses. And so these people are now making less money because of these things. So now, eggs used to, eggs. Does anybody remember when eggs were $1.99 and now they're like $7-8 a dozen and a half, an 18 pack? I mean, I just don't understand like where we go from here. And it's, even myself, like, and my wife, like, we're seeing the pinch in our pocketbooks right now. I don't know what's going to happen if, heaven forbid, one of us loses a job or have to have a job change where we're not making as much money. Like, that's really going to be hard, especially for, average Americans. And despite the warnings, my best guess is that our president and his administration will still beg for gas and oil elsewhere. And that's where these ideologies are, people, for some reason, and this is not only on, the radicalized left, but also the radicalized right, and the individuals who continue to find conspiracies within, quotes and people saying stuff when there really isn't any, or within, facts and things. And what's really interesting is that if we're not going to pump within, the confines of the United States, then we're going to have to import stuff elsewhere, increasing the price even more because of, stuff coming from overseas and tariffs and all that fun stuff. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm actually surprised that the only option that this current administration has seen was to open our military supply of oil, and to kind of distribute that to lessen the burden of some of these oil prices. And what's really interesting is that those gas prices are still going up, even in California. Where we're only, spending, between what, $4.15 and $4.50 for a gallon of gas. I think California is still hovering around $7 or $8 a gallon, isn't it? California gas prices. Of course, CaliforniaGasPrices.com. Okay, let's say Los Angeles, California. I mean, some people I think are still paying $5 or $6 a gallon. I might be incorrect on that $10 a gallon. Okay, I'm not like getting something exactly out. Okay, average price, according to gas prices, AAA.com, about $5.50 a gallon. So it's still $1 more, if not $1.25 more, a gallon for gasoline. Wow. I was completely wrong about that. My apologies, but glad I fact checked myself. So for companies that do not have a large storage tank on site and instead rely on fueling off location, the fleet could be out of commission of the fuel supplier if the fuel supplier runs out of fuel. Mansfield said companies can reduce the risk of being out of commission by issuing emergency fleet cards that give access to fuel in a trackable way, or consider installing a small tank for emergency fuel. Retail consumers could expect to see widespread fuel stations with bags over the pumps. Retail customers shouldn't expect to see widespread fuel stations with bags over the pumps, the company said. It may happen on a rare occasion, and when it does, you'll be sure to hear it in the news, but in general, retail stations will find supply and stay running. Higher prices will simply get passed on to consumers. So again, like, I really do wonder how the delivery industry is going to handle this. Because if there are days where they can't fuel their vehicles, people are going to be up in arms when their Amazon packages, don't arrive. Or maybe their contract through FedEx didn't arrive on time, and so now they got to redo it, or they have to get find a new business to work with because they didn't get it in time. Most people and businesses are unable to stock up on fuel, as most don't have a large fuel reserve tanks to fill up their vehicles on demand. This is actually going to be a very true thing when it comes to contractors in the package delivery industry. These individuals, work seemingly out of their personal homes, so they don't have a big, 150, 250 gallon tank, buried in the ground where they have all their vehicles to go and to get more fuel pumped. So this is not reasonable for many people. Now, there are some places in different industries which would have this. I mean, I would think that some farmers would have, some kind of tank that they could fuel their stuff off of, and they occasionally get it filled up. But there's not really a lot of places that have this. And especially when it comes to places like USPS and Postal Service, DHL, FedEx, and stuff like that. My hope is that when these things do run out for even a short time, that we have good temperament and patience as we get through these times. Remember the toilet paper shortage during the pandemic? Most did very well and reached out to family, friends, and associates to swap what they needed, and most shared if they had extra. I was happy. It was a happy sight to see. So that's something that has been really interesting, because in my experience during the pandemic is that there was a lot of different things where people were running out of meat. They were running out of toilet paper, tissue paper. They were running out of, chicken. They were running out of different things. And so for those that were smart and definitely had some saved up, which, luckily we did, we didn't, however, stock up too much on toilet paper, and that's because it was kind of in between our trips to Costco. And so when the pandemic hit, we literally had like 1 6-pack left. And so when we went to go shopping, that following weekend, we, just assumed that there would be plenty of toilet paper for everybody. And unfortunately, we had to call around and ask family and friends and associates. And of course, people were kind enough to trade and swap. But when it comes to gasoline, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But what are some of the positive outcomes that can happen from this? Well, the only positive outcome that could happen in the fuel and oil industry is if we go back to the policies and the laws that we had in place, which allowed, much cheaper ability to process these things, less litigation and stuff like that, so that they can get it done in a cheap and reasonable way, as well as opening up our pipelines, opening up our pumps offshore and onshore, resuming leases to go and do pumping and get these American workers on the oil fields back to work. I think that's really the best outcome we can have, because that's really going to drive the oil prices and by association, gas prices down. Now in TikTok news, there's a TikTok influencer who is telling white people not to see the Black Panther sequel. We do have a video. It looks like I have it here. I'm hoping that it's still up. Sometimes these things don't stay up. Oh no. Oh, okay, good. It looks like it's still up. Is this the right person? I believe it is. Okay, great. So an influencer took to TikTok to discourage white people from seeing the Black Panther sequel on opening weekend. Self-proclaimed activist Linder Lee explained in a now removed TikTok that white people can go see it on another weekend, but that the opening weekend set for November 11th is meant for Black people. This message is to all our wimpy accomplices and white allies. Wow. That's a nice thing to say to people who... Okay, anyway. This message is to all white people who have BLM in their bio. Lee begins the video. You can go see Black Panther Wakanda Forever on another weekend. Go see it on the second or third weekend. But the first weekend, that's for us. So let's go ahead and switch over. Let's watch this video. I'm kind of curious as to what she has to say. All right, so we had some live stream issues, so we're just going to go ahead and jump back in where we left off, which was to watch this particular video, which is the person from TikTok is telling white people to not go see Wakanda Forever the first opening weekend. So let's have a listen.
This message is to all our would-be accomplices and white allies. This message is to all the white people who have BLM in their bio. If you really want to prove to Black people that you love us and you care about us and you are down for the cause, do not go see that movie opening weekend. You buy your ticket, you give it to a Black person or a Black family who can't afford to go, and then you go sit at that theater in front of the doors. You make sure that every Black person in that theater can enjoy that movie in peace. You make sure that you use your body
security is
to
for,
block us
and police
from anybody who would be coming in that theater to do us harm. That is your job. You can go see it on another weekend. Go see it on the second or third weekend. But the first weekend, that's for us. To do anything other than this is anti-Black.
What? So if you're not going to do this for them, apparently you're anti-Black. Wow. You know, it's kind of been a very interesting part of the world as of late where, I don't know, anti-white and racism against white people is okay. It's been very interesting. You know, I thought racism was not okay for any person or against any individual or people. But let's jump back in. So remember when we talked about the definition of racism? Why are more people speaking out on these ideological anti-white racists? Because in my opinion, according to the definition of racism, it's seemingly like this person is being racist against white people. Just what my opinion. If there are people speaking out against this, then why are their voices being diminished? That's the other thing too, is that there's a lot of individuals, even Black conservatives or even Black liberals, who are speaking out against these kinds of things. And where's their voice? Why aren't their voices being heard? Why aren't they being perpetuated and boosted with these different algorithms? And this is where we're kind of at an impasse, because algorithms can be great and they can be helpful. However, because they are created by human beings, they can easily be manipulated. They can actually be used for nefarious things. This is where I really feel and believe that we need to kind of go back to the original Twitter. We need to go back to the original Facebook. We need to go back to the original YouTube, where these different algorithms aren't being put in place to either diminish or boost certain individuals or people to kind of keep the revenue up, to kind of keep the people that they want kind of on top in their on top power. And, Just let individuals figure out what they like and let them search for what they want to watch and what they like. We really don't need these algorithms. It's just basically another way to keep people's faces inside of their phones and in front of their screen as long as possible. Instead of just allowing people to experience and explore and to enjoy. Instead, it's just like, oh, you like puppies, here's more puppy videos. It's like, well, I'm done watching my puppy video for the day. I don't want to watch puppy videos. Now I want to see why these, Black Americans feel the need to, continue to spout anti-white racism. I mean, anyways, I digress. And this is why I do agree with the sentiment of Black Lives Matter. I do. Like the statement, Black Lives Matter. Like, that's a great statement. Black America is really important, that their lives do matter. And unfortunately, it's being perpetuated that everybody is apparently against them and are racist against them. And it's really sad. But the rhetoric of Black Lives Matter, if you ever gone to their website, oh my goodness. We could sit here and go through it, but I really don't have the time for that in this particular video. And I want to move on to other things, honestly. But this is why I agree with the sentiment of the Black Lives Matter movement, but disagree with their rhetoric in the anti-white part of their movement. Encouraging one skin color to purchase things and give to another is not helpful. No one should have to apologize for their skin color. It is unchangeable just as much as their sex is unchangeable, and they are born with it. There's nothing I can do. I mean, even like I'm a third generation immigrant. Like my great-grandparents on my mother's side immigrated from Sweden. My grandparents from my father's side immigrated from Germany during World War II. So as far as I know, my ancestry, like, I don't think we owned any slaves. However, during that time, everybody did that. It's not just white people. And that's what's really interesting, is like people don't understand history, especially when it comes to Black history before Black Americans became Americans. Like before that, unfortunately, I mean, this is a really sad thing, and unfortunately, it's still happening today. It's still one of the biggest slave industries in the world. Is Africa still, cultivating and selling each other into slavery? Like there's more slaves today. Like that's the thing. There's more slaves today, to date, like 2022, in the world than there have been slaves in the past. Like people don't understand that. And so these different places where they still practice this, it's really sad. And unfortunately, it's still going on. But here is the good news. The good news is that we live in a country where everybody from anywhere who are now Americans can enjoy the freedoms that we have here today. Now, is America and our laws, both federally and locally, are they perfect? No, not by a long shot. But it's definitely the freest country that I can think of. Can you think of a more freer country in the world today? I don't think we really can reasonably. So children shouldn't be punished for the sins of their fathers. Like that's the other thing. And I mean, even when we talk to indigenous people where their lands were taken away from them from the federal government of the United States, like it's a really sad and it's a really terrible blight on our history, both slavery and the taking and dividing the land away from the Native Americans. Like it's a really sad thing and it's terrible, but there's nothing that we can really do about it reasonably now, because the individuals that affected that are all dead and gone, unfortunately. Because we are human beings. None of us are getting out of here alive. So to do things like affirmative action, to do things like reparations, to do things like to continually call people racist and stuff because their ancestors were at one point owning slaves. Like, really? We got to continue to put the sins on the fathers? Like, where else is that happening? Where else in the world is it where people are putting the sins on their not only on their parents' parents, but then all of their posterity down the line. North Korea, communist China, where people, if they defy the CCP, they are either killed or they are to the point where their next 5 generations are now unable to partake in the wonderful spoils of the CCP. Huh. That's interesting. Isn't that interesting? I don't think it would work well if we turned our country into a dictatorship. I don't think it would work well for the American people if we became fascists. I don't think it would help our country if we became socialistic. Now, are there some things that are in place that are supposedly supposed to help? Sure. But is it really helping today? I don't know. What are your thoughts? So if I want to go see a movie, I'll go see it. So honestly, the inception, the first incarnation of Black Panther was average at best. As well as Disney and Marvel ideologies and agendas, I feel that's why I feel I need to skip most of their movies and TV shows as of late. Because I can't stand like watching a film or a movie where it talks about anti-white sentiment. It's like, there's nothing I can do about my skin. I'm not racist because of the color of my skin, just like anybody else who is not the same color of my skin is racist. And that's why it's so important to judge people on the merits of their character and not judge them by their cover. I don't know. Were you taught when you were a kid not to judge books by their cover? That's what I was taught. And I hope that going on through the line that other generations will learn and understand that lesson as well. So, quote, if you really want to prove to Black people that you love us and you care about us and you are down for the cause, do not go see that movie opening weekend, Lee went on. You buy your ticket, you give it to a Black person or a Black family who can't afford to go. Now, most people should be able to afford this. Now, I'm not saying that everybody can reasonably. I mean, tickets are pretty expensive right now, so I understand and I get it. But this is another idea of redistribution of wealth, and this is one of the ideologies of Black Lives Matter that I don't agree with, because I don't think it's acceptable to take money or things from one person and give it to another just because they have more than you. Now, do I definitely agree and believe that some people who are definitely in need should have a leg up in the world? Absolutely. And I believe that we should definitely have, as best as we can, an equal opportunity. However, without a lot of laws, a lot of litigation, and a lot of tyranny, there's no way to make equal outcome to everybody. A lot of that is because we're not born into this world equal. We're born. I mean, look at the specimens in MMA. Why is it that how come I don't look like Brock Lesnar? How come I don't look like Joe Rogan? How come I don't look like what's that not Scottish but Irish? What's his name? I can't think of it on the top of my head. I can see his face right now. He's kind of short and skinnier, and he has a beard usually. He has a really loud mouth. I'm sure it'll come to me. But we don't come into this world equal, unfortunately. And it is a disadvantage. Like, we have to start at zero, and we have to work our way up, and we have to work hard for what we want. We also have to work smart for what we want. Because hard work can only go so far, but smart work can go even farther in conjunction with the other. So give it to a Black person family who can't afford to go. And then you go sit in that theater in front of the doors. So we're supposed to body block. You make sure that every Black person in that theater can enjoy that movie in peace. You make sure that you use your body to block us from anybody who'd be coming in that theater to do us harm. That is your job. No, Miss Lee, that is not my job. If I want to go see a movie, I'll go see a movie. However, I didn't like the first movie, so I probably won't go see the second movie. Now, the first movie was interesting. There's some things that were good, but there were some things that were progressing through that film that just weren't that great, to be honest. Like, overall, it was just barely an average movie, just like every other movie that Marvel Disney had been bringing out. And for protection, that's for security. That's security's job. That's for police. That is not for the average person to do. Now, however, if I'm carrying a firearm, let's say, we're going to play a little mind game with this. Let's say I'm carrying a firearm and I have a concealed carry and I take it with me to go to the theater. Now, if somebody comes in the theater and starts shooting the theater, you better believe if I'm carrying, I have gone through the thought process to understand that I'm going to protect those around me. And I would do that. Absolutely. But I'm not going to go buy a ticket, give it to somebody and say, hey, go enjoy it. And I'm going to stand out here and be your bodyguard. That's not my job. It is unclear if Lee removed her own TikTok. Of course, because get woke, go broke. Or if the platform removed it. In her bio, there's still linked to a GoFundMe site, of course, to raise funds, saying that she will personally use the funds to buy tickets for Black families to see the movie in the theater of their choosing. It has raised over $500 of its $10,000 goal. While it is unclear when Lee originally posted the TikTok, the fundraiser has been active since August 2nd. So what is it? GoFundMe? GoFundMe. Wakanda Forever. Lee. Let's see if we can find it. Fund for Black families. Hey, I actually found the right one. She has raised $608 of the $2,000 goal. I'm actually quite curious to see. I don't know, but $608 out of $2,000 of the goal. I don't know how long this is going to go till. But I'm assuming it's gonna conclude sometime before the movie. I hope this person, if she does raise the money, that she does actually use it as she intends to. I'm hoping that she's not using it for her own personal reasons or own personal gain, because I feel like that's very naughty. So I can see a gift, but a redistribution of wealth is another. It is honestly gross to me to use race baiting as a way to raise money. Since we know that most of the BLM money has not been used as intended, it's safe to say that these kinds of people seem to want to leech off of as many people as they can to get ahead, and it's sad. Now, I'm not saying that this person is being a leech and using these different things of, white men bad and, promote black people at all costs of other people. I don't know this person, so I'm not really sure. But I know there have been instances, such as some of the funds that were being misappropriated and misused and being spent in ways that they shouldn't be using it. So that's something to kind of think about when you're trying to donate to different causes and you're trying to donate seemingly to somebody who's supposedly supposed to use it for something else. So just be leery and obviously do your homework. So this is meant to help people understand the significance of Black celebrations. The article goes on, and they are personal and private and should be respected. Lee further explained on the fundraiser site, being an ally does not mean you will be included. Well, that's kind of sad. You'd think that you'd be included because you're an ally, but apparently you're even more segregated by being an ally. Interesting. It means you respect us and you will help us congregate safely. Again, that's what security and police are for. Disney CEO Bob Chapek went on record Wednesday on why the company, which is also the production company for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, caters to its audience at times while accused of being too woke. The world is a rich, diverse place, and we want our content to reflect that, Chapek said. So isn't it interesting how some of these individuals and organizations kind of wrap up their racism in the guise of philanthropy and education? I think it's really interesting that the wordplay that goes on when it's like, oh, but we're doing this to educate people. We're doing this because we want to give people opportunities to go and see this movie. And I think, honestly, most people don't go see movies just to prove a point or to just show that they're part of the woke cause. Like, they go to see movies to get away from all that. They go to see movies to get lost. In the characters, to get lost in the world, to get lost in something that's not what's going on in their immediate, because people need a little bit of an escape. And I think going to the movies is much more healthy than, I don't know, heroin, crack, cocaine, fentanyl. Like, unfortunately, fentanyl is the like one of the many killers that are killing 18 to 45-year-olds. And it's starting to be up there with like cancer and stuff like that. It's actually really sad and scary. And what's interesting, sorry, going back to this, I kind of got sidetracked, but this is a normal tactic which is being used by these radicalized ideologues of the left. And it's continued to be used to encourage white apologists to continue to stay in line. Like, this is where I really strongly believe it's not really about race. It's not really about, who's racist and who's not. It's not about who's bigoted and who's not when it comes to gay, lesbian, or trans rights or anything like that. It's about control, and it's about using these different topics and these different things that are going on in the world to keep people in line. Because if you're scared about talking out about these different things, then you're going to go along with the ideology. And I'm sorry to say this, but if you're still wearing your mask in this point in time, like, you're just following along. And unfortunately, that's definitely sheep mentality rather than wolf mentality, rather than alpha and beta mentality. It's something to kind of think about and kind of decide if that's what you're going to do, especially when, the facts have come out that face masks really don't work. And as I've said before, the radical left's okay, I already said that. Anyways, so I guess, what are your guys' thoughts on this particular person? Do you guys feel that they are being racist and they are anti-white, or is this something that people believe is really helpful for humanity, where people are raising money to give tickets to people so they can go see a movie first, because it's all about Black Lives Matter. And when I hear that, like, again, like, I believe in the sentiment. I do believe that Black Americans should be able to be safe, just like white lives matter, just like white people should be, just like brown people, just like yellow people, if we have to use the different colors of the rainbow. But honestly, like, it just really is difficult to kind of boil it down to just the color of your skin, because it doesn't really matter, especially if you're born and raised in this country. Then you're bleeding red, white, and blue. Like, you're an American. And it's just really interesting that people are using this to divide and to continue to push, their personal beliefs onto other people. And it's, and I really feel like we can live in a world where we can have our own beliefs and thoughts and feelings and, and opinions. And even though mine differ than somebody else, we can still, shake hands and be cordial. And, we might not agree with each other, but hey, we could sit next to each other in a movie theater. Hey, we could sit next to each other in a restaurant and enjoy a meal with our families together. Like, I don't see any problem with that. I think that, honestly, there's a lot less that's going on in the world. We're just being pushed this through these different articles. This is being pushed through the different social medias, through mainstream media, especially CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NSB, whatever acronym you want to do now with all these different like news organizations, Wall Street Journal, Washington, whatever, Post or whatever. Like, they're all perpetuating this stuff to continue to cause divide and to try to control people. And honestly, it's time for all of us to stand up and say, we're not going to play that game anymore. So if you definitely are seeing things that are not, reflecting reality, And this is coming from somebody who had the opportunity to be, in more predominantly, like I knocked on doors in Brunswick, Georgia. Like, I didn't have a problem doing that. People were super cool. Like, anyways, I digress. So moving on, Supreme Court leans toward ending affirmative action in college admissions. So speaking of affirmative action, let's continue on to this thing. Washington conservative Supreme Court justices indicate Monday that they are willing to end the explicit consideration of race in college administrations as they weighed cases challenging affirmative action policies at the University of North Carolina and Harvard universities. Members of the court conservative majority questioned the legal rationale for allowing the practice and probed to what extent colleges and universities could enact new race-neutral admissions policies aimed at improving racial diversity. Some justices, however, indicated that they would be willing to allow applicants to discuss their racial identities in some sort of form as part of essays touching upon their experiences, such as examples of overcoming discrimination. Again, I'm interjecting here. We are in the freest time we ever have been in America by far. Like, be you immigrant, be you naturalized American, Native American, black, white, brown, yellow, purple, green, blue, red, however you want to define it. Like, we are definitely the freest we have ever been. Now, as far as like some of the laws and stuff that are going on and some of the things like, like the mandates that have happened as of the recent quote unquote pandemic, and the different things that have, trying to force upon people to take something that they don't want to put in their bodies. For the most part, we're pretty dang free. Liberal justices who are in the minority defended the use of race in admissions, citing the importance of diversity on campus and the difficulty of achieving it without any consideration of race. Affirmative action introduced to redress historic discrimination has been a contentious issue for years, strongly supported by educational institutions in corporate America as being vital to fostering diversity and condemned by conservatives as being antithetical to the notion that racial equality means all races are treated the same. The Supreme Court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, heard back-to-back oral arguments in the UNC and Harvard cases in actions brought by a group called Students for Fair Admissions, led by the conservative activist Ed Bloom. A ruling is due by the end of June. Now, I find this very fascinating, because the truth of it all is that it is imperative for our race of all humans, no matter the color of their skin, to be treated as equals. The problem with affirmative action is that it discriminates those who it does not benefit. It discriminates against those who it does not benefit. It is, in my opinion, one of the last surviving racism systems that the left seemed too important to give up. And this is something that I really do believe. Again, without a lot of laws, without a lot of litigation, policies and procedures, without literally tyrannical government to step in and to make it happen, you cannot give people equal outcome. It is impossible to get one person, even if they're raised by the same family, the same everything, with the same schools, got the same grades. It's difficult for the two people, like let's say twins, to have the equal outcome that they quote unquote deserve. Now, I don't think everybody deserves an equal outcome. I do believe that everybody should have a chance at those outcomes. However, not everybody can be an Instagram influencer. Because if we could all become Instagram influencers, we would all be Instagram influencers. Now, are there people who are making a great living off of being an Instagram influencer? Absolutely. There are many people who are making hundreds of thousands, if not multi-million dollars off of these different websites and social media companies, including starting up businesses and continue to pushing their products to their fans, to their loyal customers. Now, I don't think these individuals are bad. I think they have utilized themselves in a way, or utilized their mental capacity, or maybe their femininity or their masculinity, or maybe their looks, or maybe their brains, and they have found a way to make it work for them. And honestly, more power to you. I don't believe it's okay for you to say, well, there's somebody who's decided that they're going to be an Instagram influencer. Therefore, you now have to give, half of your money to that person so that they can be an Instagram influencer. I don't think it's going to work really well to rob Peter to pay Paul and then leave Peter in the wind. It doesn't work. That's a redistribution of wealth. That's socialism. Time and time again, it hasn't worked. And obviously, because we are Americans and because we are America, we have fought to continue to keep those freedoms and not be under a socialistic regime. Diversity is important, but it only thrives properly if it's not forced. That's something that media individuals, as well as these quote-unquote journalists, have not learned. This is where we struggle in the TV and movie industry, as well as journalism and education. The radicalized left has permeated many facets and control, and if we have too much of one side without the other to oppose them, we will not find the middle ground. And that's where we have found that there have been some websites who have been against conservatives and even liberals that are on the opposing side of the radicalized left. And the thing is that we need those opposing views. And the reason that we need those opposing views is so that we can make an educated decision. Now, one of the things that I think is really, really important, and I think for some strange reason we're not doing this, is basically holding people accountable for having their references available, as well as, links to the information that they are getting from, having links to the studies that they're pulling information from. So that way people can go, okay, I don't know what you're talking about here. Let me read more into that. And I can open up those links and reasonably come to a similar conclusion, or maybe even have a completely different outlook from the creator of that article. I feel like that would be really good journalism. I think that would be really good, newscasting, to have these kinds of things. And I think that's really important, because we're kind of losing journalism. We're kind of losing the news, just giving the news as of, these are the things that have happened. These are the facts around the thing. Wow, isn't that interesting? And then they kind of go, that's what's really interesting, because when I was growing up, I used to watch the news every night when I got older, and I was old enough to stay out later with my parents. And the news has changed quite a bit since I've grown up, especially somewhere around the 2000s. I would probably say this has changed, especially around the same time social media was coming around. Same time, I think a lot of these different ideologues were, graduating and becoming more prominent in these different tech companies and starting to grow with them, and finally getting to the point where they are in these managerial and corporate CEO kind of like profiles here, where they can actually enact the change that they want within these companies. And unfortunately, especially mainstream news right now, they're not objective. they're very subjective. They're not utilizing all of the facts. They're not giving all of the angles and leaving the viewer with an idea of, I really now understand both sides of this thing, and I'm kind of curious where I am. Am I on this one side or am I on the other side? I don't really know. Let me go in and learn more about it. But we're not like that nowadays. Nowadays, it's all opinion pieces. It's all subjective. It's I'm going to give this from the view of my personal belief. And you could probably say that about me as well. I don't kind of tout myself as somebody who gives all the facts, and I'm definitely giving my opinions and thoughts and my commentary on these different articles. I'm not somebody who's claiming to have complete objectivity. I do have my personal biases, and I'm sure people can see that in the things that I say about these different articles. But it's really important to share all the sides and all the angles, and then after presenting the information, allowing the viewer to figure out for themselves what they want. Nowadays, it's about leading people into thinking a certain way, having a certain belief, having a certain ideology, and then continue to placate to the side, or the team, we could say, their favorite team that they want to be on. But I digress. In almost 5 hours of oral arguments, conservative justices expressed hostility to explicit consideration of race in an application. What do you learn from their mere checking of the box? Justice Samuel Alito, asked UNC lawyer Ryan Park. But some conservatives seem more open to at least some recognition of an applicant's race as part of the process. If box checking is not allowed, would it be acceptable if Harvard were allowed to take into consideration what an applicant would say in an essay about having to confront discrimination growing up and how he or she did that? Chief Justice John Roberts asked Cameron Norris, the lawyer challenging Harvard's policy. Norris said the university could lawfully consider such expressions of racial identity. So just like my thoughts when it comes to doing resumes and stuff like that, we need to be able to have, just like resumes. Like, I think it would probably be better if we were able to have resumes without race involved, without sex involved, without any indication of who you are except for your accomplishments, what you did, and where you did them at. I think you should have a number attached to that resume. I think the person that is doing the hiring can sit there and consider the qualifications of the position and look and see if they have something that is similar or close to the experience that the applicant has. And if they align and they match up, then they would continue on to like a face-to-face or an in-person interview. I think that would be more appropriate than having these certain different things on your resume that would indicate your race, indicate your sex, indicate your age. Like, if we're really going to be, in my opinion, this is my opinion, if we're really going to not discriminate against any of these things, we should definitely at least try that the first go round, because we're still not doing that. The different applications that I've been put through, it's asked me my sex, it's asked me my age, it's asked me my height and my weight on some of them. It's asked me for my race, it's asked me for my sex. So, and this is, very important, because if people believe or have, government outlines that say that, okay, now businesses now have to have at least 50% women and 50% men, which is going to be very, very difficult, because you're going to have be hard pressed time to fill these other slots that are mainly men oriented or maybe male needed because of the physical aspect of it. And so I actually apply that to this idea of these different potential college students that write their essays. Like, I think that they shouldn't include, oh, I've been discriminated against, because everybody's been discriminated against. I've been discriminated against. I know family members who have gone for jobs and said, sorry, we can't hire you because you are a man or a woman, or because you are not the race we are looking for. Like, there's discrimination today. It happens every day in our lives, especially in the hiring process. Now, I think it's important to look at people's achievements, to look at their job experience, as long as it doesn't indicate whether they're male, female, they don't have these, they don't have any indication of their nationality, their race, I just said nationality, their sex, their orientation, which is nowadays a thing. I think if they can exclude all of those and be it very neutral on all of those lines as best as they possibly can, then I think, honestly, they'll still have a diverse wealth of students, and they just pick the ones that they feel are the best, that they feel are going to do well in their school. And hey, great. If they're white, great. If they're black, great. If they're Latino, great. If they're Asian, great. I don't see why we have to force diversity, because forced diversity doesn't help anyone. It becomes more meaningful if you get your place when you get hired for that new job on your merit alone, rather than knowing that because of affirmative action that they had to hire you because not enough applicants were applying from that particular skin color. And these are the things that worry me. Like, let's say the roles are reversed. Let's do a thought experiment here. Let's go ahead and reverse the roles here. Let's say, in reality, America is has about 30% black and was it like 60 or 70% white or whatever it is. 50, 60 white, whatever. Let's reverse that. And let's say black America was the dominant skin color, we'll say, in America. Like, how would you feel if you went to that job, or let's say you submitted that essay and they said, sorry, we can't give you this permission. We can't give you the opportunity to be a part of our team. We can't give you this slot to come into our university because we have to meet a quota because of, because of diversity, because of affirmative action. We have to give these white people a chance because they're not as many in the United States, or whatever the case may be. Like, how would you feel if you were rejected because of that? Like, I wouldn't feel very good if somebody else got the job, even though I was probably better qualified, but because of the skin color of this particular person, or because of their ancestors, 3, 5, 10, whatever down the line, individuals who are Native American and lived at that time, were discriminated against. Now we have to give them that spot, even though they haven't technically earned it or have shown in their particular essays or their achievements or their school record or their grades don't reflect that. I would feel very discouraged if I was giving literally a handout. And I'm wondering, I really do wonder if these individuals are literally getting handouts for jobs, really getting handouts for these different parts of these universities to fill their affirmative action quotas. If they do feel like they've achieved something, they do feel like they got in because of their merits, because they worked hard. And how do you feel about the other people that didn't get that spot, who might have been better fit for that? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Leave your comments down below. In 2016, the last time Supreme Court ruled on affirmative action, the justices narrowly upheld the administration's policy at the University of Texas at Austin on a 4-3 vote, with conservative Justice Anthony Kennedy, who has since retired, casting the deciding vote. The court shifted to the right after President Donald Trump, appointed 3 conservative justices. President Joe Biden's appointment of Jackson did not change the ideological balance of the court, as she replaced fellow liberal Justice Stephen Breyer. As Jackson served on the Harvard's board of the overseers during the litigation, she stepped aside from that case and will participate only in the North Carolina dispute. Bloom's group argues that any consideration of race in college administrations is unlawful under both federal law that bars discrimination in education and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. That's something that's really important. Sorry, I have to interject, but because of affirmative action, it's discriminating against other people from getting in, because it is allowing other people who may have not achieved those things granted access into these different places of education, even though they're only getting in on the merits of the color of their skin, which again, nobody can control that. So that is also discrimination. So this is something that, they definitely need to take a really good hard look at it. And then it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So they argue the UNC administration's policy discriminates against white and Asian applicants, and that the Harvard policy discriminates against Asians. In both cases, lower courts ruled in favor of the universities. In defending their policies, universities and their supporters include the Biden administration, civil rights groups, businesses, and former military leaders argue that excluding someone based on race is completely different from seeking diversity on campus. You're speaking the same thing. It's just doublespeak. The universities say race is just one factor that is considered a part of broad individualized analysis of each applicant. If affirmative action is ended, those defending the practice say race-neutral policies aimed at achieving diversity will often fail, leading to declines in Black and Hispanic enrollment. The challengers point to examples in the 9 states that already banned the practice as evidence that considering race is not essential. Honestly, no one should be talking about their background. They should be establishing how great they are at math, or how they want to be the next big movie director, or even have submissions of their thesis on black holes in the universe, or whatever academic they should be sharing. They should be able to omit sex, nationality, upbringing, and just focus on why their previous academic achievements should award them a spot in their prestigious school. How would you feel if you got accepted into school because they had to reach a quota when another student would be better fit for their program? I think, I couldn't go through life feeling that I didn't earn it. Hard work and smart planning should be how you progress in life, not a statistic. And so we're kind of running out of time here. Good. That's the last part anyways. So where do we go from here? That's something that's really important to kind of talk about here, because here's the thing. I think there's going to be a diversity of people if you do blind submissions, meaning the submissions are devoid of race. It's devoid of discrimination, devoid of nationality, skin color, sex. Like, it's devoid of all these things. It's just like, hey, I'm this person. I found out I really enjoyed math. Math has been something that I've been really excited about because it unlocks the secrets of the universe. And one day I want to be as smart as Tyson DeGrassi, or, name astrophysicist, here. I've always loved art. Art is something that's really been very special to me, and it's been a great place in my heart. I love pieces from Van Gogh and all of these different stuff. I want to one day become a great painter of our time. these are the things that are important. Well, I mean, maybe not necessarily important, like as far as like art is concerned, but at least giving a snippet of why you should be considered for the school. Talk about your academics and the things you've done in the past in your previous schools that would qualify you to become in these part of these different schools. Now, I don't remember exactly which article I read, but there was an article I read which talked about some of these schools overseas, and they do have affirmative action in these schools. And what's really interesting that they found as they continued to perpetuate the affirmative action in the United Kingdom, these definitely large, prestigious schools, they found that those individuals that were given a spot on the merit of the melanin in their skin alone, that they struggled, and unfortunately a lot of them don't end up doing well in those schools because they weren't prepared. They didn't have the academics from the get-go to get them into the school and to do well. And I think honestly, especially from the different people that have talked to me when I was out working, installing security systems for people, in Brunswick, Georgia, working with people in these different places, that are predominantly black, is that they need to change their culture to focus on school, to graduate from school, and not only graduate school, but do really, really well so they can apply and get inside these schools relatively easy because of their merits. And I guess I'll just leave you with this, because we're kind of in the place now where our gas prices aren't going to go down until our current president and his administration redo the things that they undone, basically, And unfortunately about the Black Panther movie is that I don't know if the second one's going to be good. The first one was really just okay. And it's not because of the melanin in your skin. It's just that it just was not done very well. The graphics were just okay. The fight sequences were just okay. So his storytelling was pretty good. The characters were very interesting. But again, it's not something I'm going to go see in the movie theater because the first one just didn't do it for me. And maybe it's not for me, and that's perfectly fine. But I don't think it's okay to discriminate against people because they want to literally control people into not going into a film because you need to be our ally and you need to do what we tell you to do. And I don't think that's okay. If you want to go see a movie, go see a movie. If you want to go see Black Panther on opening weekend, go see Black Panther on opening weekend. I don't need to go to prove anything. I figure I am just a regular guy with a microphone, and I can do that just fine here from my home. With the Supreme Court possibly overturning the affirmative action in America, I think that would be a really smart move, because I think that the people that deserve to be there should have the academia from high school to support that there's somebody that would do well in those schools. And what's really interesting, especially when you go to places like Harvard, like even those individuals that are getting, 4.0 GPAs and a part of, Humane Society, a part of, these high level, borderline college like level classes and doing really, really well. It doesn't mean always that they're going to do well going into places like Harvard. Like there's a certain percentage of people who are just not going to make it because they just can't keep up with the work, or they can't keep up with, the perseverance through the hardest parts of these things. And I think it's important to give people the opportunities that feel the best fit, just like for job interviews. If you are the best fit, it doesn't matter what color your skin is, or what your background is, or where your grandparents came from, or were not discriminated against. It doesn't matter. If you're the right person for the job, then I'm going to put you as that person in the job, and hopefully you will do well. So anyways, I hope that you guys have a wonderful day. I hope that you guys leave me a comment and let me know what's your thoughts on all these different things. And I really do appreciate you guys. We've been growing quite recently. It's a really fun time to see the Periodic Review podcast grow. I'm really excited to see the podcast crew on Saturday. And we will see you guys all then. And so from my family to yours, good night. Today's video is sponsored by viewers like you, so thank you. If we earned your subscription today, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button, click that damn bell, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a content release. The best way to support the channel is to like this video, share it with family and friends, and don't forget to leave a comment down below. Send all of your topic ideas, articles, and video links to theperiodicreview@gmail.com. All of our links are in the description down below.